Hello and welcome to this video. My name's Kris, I'm an Australian GP, and in today's video I'm going to be talking about a relatively sensitive topic. I'm going to be covering why we as doctors presume that any person who has a uterus over the age of say 12 until about the age of 55, 60 is pregnant until proven otherwise. Now, I have really good intentions behind this video about discussing where our perspective is, but I also want to acknowledge that there has been a history of medical gaslighting and misogyny that just because I have good intentions doesn't mean that my previous colleagues may have, and that this topic may be a bit sensitive for some. So I am hoping to come from a place of good intentions and politeness and wanting to be opening the discourse, and I am going to do my very best. So I want to start off with apologizing on behalf of myself and my colleagues that I know come from a good place if our words have ever made you feel less than or reduced down to just your reproductive ability. I can attest from my own perspective that this is never the intention when we do question about your period, could you be pregnant, how far along you are, anything like that. However, I do acknowledge that it can be perceived this way, and perhaps there are some practitioners that are misogynistic and do come with this approach. So I just wanted to apologize from the get-go because I appreciate it's a really sensitive topic and it can really reduce the trust that a person with childbearing organs has in their practitioners, and that's just not okay. So why do we assume until proven otherwise, as a rule, that someone who has a menstrual cycle is pregnant until proven otherwise? Really, it boils down to the fact that pregnancy is not a benign condition. When you are pregnant, everything we do has another consequence, because it's not just you now, we're also treating your child that you are currently building, no matter how far along you are from conception until delivery, and even beyond delivery. We have to be aware that as physicians, everything we do, every symptom we listen to comes with a lens of, okay, and pregnant or not. Every investigation we do has to be interpreted through the lens of pregnant or not, because reference ranges change. And for example, we shouldn't x-ray someone who is pregnant because that radiation is harmful to a developing baby. Every treatment we utilize is affected because there are some things that are really not okay for pregnant people and their babies, and there are some treatments that are much preferred. And the expected outcome of certain treatments will vary as well. So pregnancy is not benign. This isn't an excuse though for us to just boil it down and go, well, you're pregnant, so get over it, or anything like that. But this is why we make this assumption and why we have to rule out pregnancy first before we do anything, because medically, it's a massive risk if we don't rule it out and we give you something or do something that could potentially harm your baby. Our intention, or at least in my own practice, is that we use our due diligence and we rule out pregnancy as I don't want to say comorbid because that sounds very clinical, and pregnancy isn't clinical, can be, but as a concurrent condition. Again, pregnancy is a condition. You know what I'm trying to say. I want to rule it out quickly and effectively so that I can get to the heart of the matter at hand. Even if you say to me, look, I don't think there's a chance I'm pregnant, it is still my responsibility to make sure of that. So again, I hope that I communicate enough with my patients, and that my colleagues do as well, to explain that whilst there may be only a tiny chance, I would still like to rule it out effectively. So this is why someone might say, well, I'm on my period, so I can't be pregnant, but we still do a pregnancy test. This is why someone may say, oh, I haven't had sex in a while, I can't be pregnant, but we still do a pregnancy test, or we still ask about it. Because again, there are so many things that could go wrong should you actually happen to be pregnant, and it's much easier to do a very cheap and effective test than to look back and regret, if that makes sense. Like I said, if you do happen to be pregnant, the intention isn't to go, see, you're pregnant, no wonder you've got X symptom or whatever. That's not the intention, although I acknowledge that in some circles this does occur and it sucks, it really does. So why do we assume that everyone is pregnant? Wouldn't it be obvious? Problem is, no, it's not always obvious, and many of us have been burnt before, assuming there's no way they could be pregnant. It turns out they are. I mean, there's a whole TV series on TLC, I Didn't Know I Was Pregnant, that shows that people can actually go through a full-term pregnancy with minimal symptoms, or with symptoms that are better explained by other things to them, and then turn out, oh my God, I've delivered a baby and I didn't know I was pregnant. So it's not always obvious. For some people it absolutely is, but not for everyone. So we do have to make that assumption. And I have seen people in their 50s fall pregnant. It's known as a twilight pregnancy, if anyone's interested, who were going through the menopause changes and thought, oh, the lack of period was actually just the menopause, when no, actually it was a growing fetus. So again, many of us have been burnt before or have been mistaken. So we do make that assumption and then ask more questions. There truly are only so many circumstances where pregnancy is legitimately impossible. And the only one I can think of off the top of my head is just lack of the organs to have said pregnancy. So after hysterectomy or bilateral oophorectomy, that is taking away the ovaries. Yeah, it's possible in most other circumstances. So someone might say, well, I'm a virgin, so I can't be pregnant. The thing is, virginity itself is actually a social construct. There's no medical definition of virginity. So when you say you're a virgin, am I interpreting that the same way as you're interpreting that? And again, it might be that we question it. It's not like we go, oh, you must be lying, so we're still going to test you. It's just defining that is really important. So I have met teenagers who have insertional penile intervaginal sex, but believe that if both parties didn't come to orgasm, it wasn't sex, so they were both virgins. When if the sperm carrying, producing partner in this aspect, the male, does ejaculate or orgasm, then the female in this equation, or the person with a vagina, may fall pregnant. But they consider themselves virgins, and that's fine. You do your own social construct is your own social construct. But this is why, as a clinician, I have to ask and why I have to clarify. And again, like I said, I've met that couple before. So what if I'm a woman in a relationship with a woman? Well, yes, but scientifically speaking, two people in female bodies or with female genitalia cannot get each other pregnant yet. I'm not sure the science is there. However, saying that you're in a same-sex relationship or calling yourself a lesbian or whatever your preferred term is does not automatically mean that you could not be pregnant, because from a medical legal standpoint, I cannot assume that you are in a monogamous relationship, although you can tell me and then we can make a judgment call. And I've met people who identify as being in a same-sex couple or a lesbian who do also have casual intercourse with people who could get them pregnant. So again, when you say, I only have a girlfriend, or I have, my wife is my partner, or the only person I have sex with is my wife, we do have to clarify again, just to be sure, because missing a pregnancy would be detrimental to you and the pregnancy in so many circumstances. And this isn't, I appreciate that this sounds like we are belittling same-sex couples, and again, I can only speak for myself, that is not the case. I am a strong ally and a strong advocate for the LGBTQI plus community, and it really is tough to do so, to ask questions and to do my job without seeming like I'm belittling it, and that really isn't the intention, and I'm still learning the best way to do so. Because I appreciate when you say I'm in a same-sex relationship and your physician goes, well, have you had sex with a man though? That can seem really intimidating and seem like I'm just, disregarding a relationship, and that truly is not my personal intention. And again, I can't speak for my colleagues, but for the vast majority of my friends and colleagues, I know that's not their intention. So perhaps we need to listen more to the community and find out the best way to approach this. Because again, for us, we're just trying to keep you safe. But for you, I appreciate this may be a bit confrontational. So let me know if you do identify or are part of that community, maybe the better way for us to approach this. moving on, I've had a few people go, well, I can't be pregnant. I have a Mirena or a Kyleena or an Implanon or a really effective form of birth control on board. Sadly, nothing is perfect. The only way to not fall pregnant is to not have sex, or to have a monogamous relationship with a same-sex partner and never be exposed to the opposite sex in a sexual way. So even if you have a 99.98% chance of not being pregnant, we may still test just to be sure. Also, as clinicians, we have to be very considerate that sometimes non-consensual sexual intercourse occurs. So in these circumstances, especially if we're meeting for the first time, our patients may not be forthcoming or may not want to discuss it or may not want to even think about it as a possibility that experience could have resulted in a pregnancy. So we have to be conscious of that. And again, we're not assuming that everyone that comes in has been sexually assaulted. That's the furthest thing from the truth. But we do have to be cognizant that this happens. And again, I have seen it personally myself in the emergency room. I have seen it in my GP clinics, and it's awful. And I wish we didn't have to think about it, but I think it would be wrong if we didn't. So again, just careful questioning around, have you had sex, consensual or otherwise, just to rule out the risk of pregnancy is important. And again, I'm always open to learning about how better to communicate that and my intentions when I'm asking questions. It really is a sensitive topic, the topic of someone's bodily functions, their pregnancy status, their sexual activity. And I want to assure you that the majority of us, at least that I know of, come from a really good place of just wanting to protect you and any possible babies that you may be carrying. It is never, in my experience, to belittle your symptoms down to, oh, well, you're just pregnant, or, well, it's just your period, or it's just because you're a woman, because that's just not on, that's not acceptable. Sometimes it is the answer. Sometimes the pain is your menstrual cycle, but it shouldn't just be, so suck it up. It's okay, and here's how we can help. But that's a tangent for another day. So I hope this explains a little bit from our perspective where we're coming from. And again, I can only speak for myself. I am so sorry again if anyone listening to this has had the experience where they were belittled or felt interrogated or felt judged by a clinician when they were asking these questions. I hope that in the future we see that practice is just made obsolete and that we all come from a place of open communication, transparency. I'm asking you these questions because it's really important. No judgment. I just need to know, is there a chance you could be pregnant? If you say no, can I clarify? Because again, it's really important. Okay, awesome. I'm glad there's a very low chance of pregnancy. Do you mind if I still rule it out? Because again, I'd hate to miss it, and then we can get to the bottom of it. That's pretty much the way I try and approach it. But again, I'm really open to listening to constructive criticism or to ways to better that. So I hope that you've learned something. Please give me as much feedback as you feel necessary. Please ask any questions that you need to. And until the next video, guys, stay safe, stay healthy, and I will see you very soon.